I got my hands on the new S23 Ultra for 2023 with a new 200 megapixel camera. But not just that, there's also the new S23 and the 23 Plus, and perhaps even more surprising, 4 new laptops that on the surface have pretty good specs and design. Okay, so this is what the S23 Ultra looks like. Its screen does still slightly curve down at the edges, but overall the screen is more flat, which I think is great. This difference is pretty small, but I think it might help reduce the vignette effect around the edges. Now, another thing that changed this year is that the S23 and 23 Plus now have these individual camera lenses instead of a camera bump. So it's just like how it is on the S23 Ultra. I personally don't really like this individual design because I feel like it's hard to wipe the dust in between all of these lenses, but I have seen these cases that actually go around each individual lens, and it does look pretty clean, so you might like this look. And other than that, the S23 Ultra still has its square boxy shape with a 6.8-inch screen, while the S23 and S23 Plus still have their more rounded shape, and their screens are 6.1 inches and 6.6 inches respectively. And the backs of all 3 phones are matte glass, which I do like. It feels quite nice, and the sides are aluminum. Now, I do prefer the more rounded shape and kind of wish the S23 Ultra could become more rounded, but since it does need to hold the S Pen inside, I don't think this will ever happen. And this year, all 3 phone screens are made with Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which according to their website, improves drop performance on rougher surfaces like concrete. Obviously, I don't know how much better this new glass is, but I hope I won't have to test it out. And something that's different this year is that all 3 models come in the same 4 color options. There's this green color, which looks like it kind of has a gray undertone, and this lavender, which is very light, and also the classic black and cream, which is this off-white color. I think probably my favorite one is this cream one. It looks very bright and clean, and I don't know if there will be any exclusive colors online, but maybe in the future. Okay, but in general, I find it kind of interesting that it seems like they're trying to make the regular S23 and S23 Plus more similar with the S23 Ultra, with changing up their camera layout design and also making all of these color options the same. And there are definitely some changes to the camera that I think could be very significant. So for the S23 Ultra, the biggest upgrade is the main lens. It's now a 200 megapixel sensor, and that just might make it the highest megapixel count in any camera period, so not just a smartphone camera. But obviously, I don't think it will out-resolve all conventional cameras. I think the point is that this megapixel allows the sensor to be read in different modes, so it can combine them for better low light or read each pixel individually for more detail. I also noticed that there will actually be both a 200 megapixel mode and a 50 megapixel mode, which is pretty surprising. I feel like the 200 megapixel mode is going to look about the same as a 50 megapixel mode, but I couldn't test this out during my hands-on time with it, so be sure to stay tuned for my full review. But from my experience, the higher resolution mode does make a difference. It makes the image sharper, which you can really see when you punch in, and so it's better if you want to crop the image. But as you can see here, the 200 megapixel photo does take up quite a bit of storage, though the 50 megapixel photo is significantly smaller. So I think I would use this new 50 megapixel mode, the middle ground mode, pretty often. And another thing that I think will be pretty huge is 8K at 30 FPS. Now, normally I would consider 8K recording on a smartphone just a gimmick, but actually by recording in 8K, it changes how the pixels read out and actually results in a much more detailed image with way less sharpening artifact. Even if you convert the 8K video to 4K later, it still looks much better than directly shooting 4K video on the phone due to the different processing. I do wish there's a 4K high quality video mode where the sensor is read in 8K and the phone does internal downsampling, kind of like the Canon R5. But at least we have an option here to get much higher quality video, and now in 30 FPS. And also on the front. So all 3 models this year has a 12 megapixel selfie camera. Yes, even the S23 Ultra. We'll definitely have to wait to see if this will be an upgrade. My experience with last gen was really good. It was probably one of the best selfie cameras I've ever tested. Also, I think it's likely that the S23 Ultra's selfie camera will be the exact same as in the regular S23 series, since they are the exact same in terms of paper specs. So potentially, the smaller and cheaper S23 series will now also get a really quality selfie camera, probably one of the best on the market. And one more interesting thing is that in the Expert RAW app, the S23 can now take 50 megapixel RAW photos instead of just 12 megapixels. I definitely will be testing this out in my full review to see if it's valuable or not. In terms of battery, so the S23 Ultra will still have a 5000 milliamp hour battery, which is huge, and combined with the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, this could mean a 2-day battery life. And the regular S23 series both received a battery size bump of 200 milliamp hours. So now the regular one has 3900 and the Plus has 4700. This is definitely a nice upgrade, especially for the smaller one. Okay, and performance might actually be the biggest upgrade for the new phones. First of all, it seems like there is no longer going to be an Exynos SoC, and since in recent years, the Exynos chip has been lagging behind the Snapdragon, this is pretty good news for those who previously could only get the Exynos version. So all three of these new phones will have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 SoC, which, going by the numbers seen in other phones, is going to be an absolute beast in terms of gaming, and possibly make these some of the best gaming phones. I will definitely be testing out the performance more in my review. And as for storage, so this year, both the S23 Plus and the Ultra will start at 256 gigabytes, while the smaller one will still start at 128. And currently, I'm not sure if the S23 Ultra will also start at 12 gigs of RAM. And not much changed about the S23 Ultra's S Pen, but since it appeared again, it's probably here to stay on the Ultras for the foreseeable future. The S Pen is something that you don't really think you'll need, but after using it, you'll probably find that it's pretty nice to have. It's nice to be able to take these screen-off memo notes with it, where I can write on the screen immediately after taking out the S Pen. And also, just being able to write precisely and annotate things is pretty useful at times. And since it has a button, you can also use it as a remote shutter button, which I found helpful for taking myself pictures. So yeah, the S Pen is definitely a nice addition, and also apparently now you can co-edit in Samsung Notes. I'm not exactly sure what all the details on this are, but I definitely want to test it out because Samsung Notes is a really good app. It has very good features and good support for both handwriting and text, so this new co-editing thing could potentially bring this app to the next level. Okay, so the phone upgrades are looking pretty solid, but maybe the even more significant change this year are the laptops. There's actually 4 new laptops this year. A Book 3 Pro, which comes in 14 and 16 inch, a Book 3 Pro 360, and a Book 3 Ultra, which both come in 16 inch. All of these laptops will have 3K resolution with 120 Hz, which is a huge upgrade and very good. But the peak brightness seems to be 500 nits for HDR and 400 nits otherwise. I feel like this is a bit low, but these screens are OLED, so it will have true black on each individual pixel. And finally, they have made the switch to 16:10 displays, which I'm very happy to see. I think it's just a much better aspect ratio for laptop productivity. The 14-inch Book 3 Pro is around 1.17 kilograms, and the 16-inch is going to be 1.56, so pretty thin and light. But surprisingly, they will have a full USB-A port and an HDMI port. The Book 3 Pros will not have touchscreen, but the Book 3 Pro 360 will, and you can also write on it with the S Pen. The 360 version is 16 inches, which I feel like is really big for a tablet 2-in-1 device, but perhaps it'll be fine if you mostly just use it on a desk. I'm pretty excited about this 2-in-1 device. It could be a really good note-taking device for me since I like the lighter S Pen. And also the 360 device can have 5G. And all of these will use an Intel 13th Gen 28-watt part, so they should be pretty fast. But for more performance, there's also the new Book 3 Ultra with a 45-watt CPU and a dedicated NVIDIA 4070 or 4050 GPU. But one design decision that I find a bit weird is that all the 16-inch models will have a number pad. I personally don't use a number pad, and it would be a bit of a hindrance since it would shift the rest of my keyboard to be not in the center of my laptop. But of course, there are definitely people who would benefit from this. And I think these laptops will really give the Samsung ecosystem a big boost. The Samsung ecosystem already has plenty of features, but I personally think that the Samsung laptop has always been the weak link in the ecosystem, or at least that's what prevented me from fully switching to a Samsung ecosystem. But this year, these laptops do look really promising. I will be testing out the S23 Ultra, and I hope to be testing out the rest of them soon. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe and you can watch more here.